What's up, everybody? And we are back with the fourth episode 4, where it all started, you might say, of the Force Sensitive. And I'm here with my lovely and diligent co-host, Mr. Gort.
Hey, how you doing?
And he's got a new lovely mic, doesn't he? Got those sound waves
Sounds
coming through.
Sounds like a brand new man.
Yeah.
Blue Yeti.
And we are here with our guest, Mr. Instasam, who I've never had the opportunity to actually speak to in person, but I've always had, or rather on the phone, whatever, but I've always had kind of interactions with online for years now. So,
hey, thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for doing this, and it works with your schedule. So it's this is a tricky show to kind of get logistically because of my schedule. So we wanted to take advantage of it. So we know that Instasam has a lot that he wants to talk about towards the tail end of kind of where the franchise has gone. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it, unless you have anything, Gord, that you'd like to add.
No, let's get started.
All right. So talk to me about the first time you remember seeing Star Wars.
So I remember, like, as a really young kid, you know, like before the age of 5, I wasn't really interested in it. Well, it was always like just around. My oldest brother, he's like old enough to be my dad, right? So he grew up with it, and he was always really into it. And he's going to come up a lot in this conversation because it's always like something special that we share together. Mm-hmm. So I remember it kind of just being on TV, and I think like at that age, probably I do like what my sons do, is like they watch it and then they go play it. You know what I mean? Like they don't sit down and watch the movie and get into the fiction. But it's funny, my first like memory that was like distinctly Star Wars it must have been on TV or something. We were watching The New Hope and the Star Destroyer comes across the top of the screen right after the scroll. Mm-hmm. And my brother, he had these two, I don't know if you guys remember these, they were like die cast. It was like a Millennium Falcon and a Star Destroyer. I don't know if they're a big thing or not, but I took, like, I saw that scene and I took his Star Destroyer and I just threw it across the room and broke it. So I broke the bridge off of it, and I remember him hollering at me for that. And then I think, other than before I actually sat down and watched the movie, my only other memory was just seeing the red carded figures in KB, and that was when they had like the first Power of the Force, where everyone's like just had the biggest muscles.
So you don't have any recollection of like the Kenner line, really?
Nope, that was before my time. I was born in '89.
Wow.
So that was all phased out.
How the hell were you born in '89, but your beard was born in '72?
I was born with it.
Oh.
It was a transplant.
I gotcha.
Yeah. But so I remember I knew what Star Wars was. I had seen the toys in the toy store, but I was into like Biker Mice from Mars and Power Rangers and all that shit. So when I was in 2nd grade was when the special editions came out. And like my best friend from elementary school was like, "Hey man, you want to come with me and my family? We're gonna go see Star Wars." And I was like, "Yeah, let's go." And it was just the perfect age, you know.
That's
and
crazy.
We saw the New Hope, so I actually saw them in order, which I think I'm the first person on the show that can say that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you are.
I watched the New Hope and I was hooked. It blew me
with the special edition, so you don't have that comparison. So
yeah, and
we have to dig into that a little bit. Like,
yeah.
So how did, like, being of that age? Are you fiddling with something, by the way? There's something like going on over there.
Are you talking to me? Oh yeah, I'm playing with a toy. I'll put it down.
Yeah. How, being of that age and right in line with that, like, kind of generational pocket where you should have landed for that movie to kind of really hit you, how did the CGI feel? Obviously you didn't notice the changes because you weren't really aware of the originals, but
yeah.
How did all of that, did any of that strike you weird in comparison with other CGI that you were seeing in other films or anything like that? Did anything seem out of place, or did it all seem normal? And so talk to me about that experience a little bit.
So yeah, I think if I would have went in and they would have been just straight re-releases, I think in my head, like in my childlike mind, I would have felt like I was watching an old movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think because the CGI was updated to the standards of that time, it didn't feel like I was watching some old movie from the 70s or 80s. It just felt like I was seeing a new movie that was coming out new to me. But then I think with the updates, it made it more palatable for me. Because even as a kid, I think you can tell when you're watching an old movie, even if it's like a action one like that you'd be interested in. So I think that did kind of help get me. But I can't say, if they didn't make those changes, I can't say whether I would have liked it or not. I'm sure I would have, but
it's just amazing, because like you're probably the first person I've ever spoken to who had their first experience watching the original trilogy, like really properly watching it, be the special editions.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if I've ever seen the original ones, all of them, all the way through.
Wow.
Like even to this day, because they released the special editions like all in a span of months, right?
Yeah.
And then they came out on video, and I got the box set for Christmas, and I just remember watching that, nonstop. But it's interesting because when I got a little bit older, and people kind of have criticisms for those changes in the release of the special editions, but that's what got me into it.
Right.
I think without those, the Phantom Menace came out, so I may have gotten into it, but it kind of has formed my opinion of when something Star Wars related comes out, and maybe you're not crazy about it. It might be the thing that gets a new person hooked,
right?
And that's kind of my view on a lot of this stuff.
There is like it is interesting to hear you say like because it felt like a current movie, because I've often said like with all the digital grading that they've done of that movie with each release, they've somehow made it seem current, like constantly current. Like,
yeah.
Like where I always use Tootsie as like the example, but like when you go back and watch Tootsie, it feels like you're watching an 80s movie, like the film grade and all that, but you don't get that with Star Wars.
Yeah, and I think that again is another good thing. So
yeah,
they
agree.
Keep going in and making it more palatable for new people, and that's what's important for me. And then, like I said, I was hooked, man. And it was all 3 3/4,
right?
In Micro Machines.
So it's almost like you lived our experience just like 20 years later. Cause like,
yeah, and I'm thankful for that, because when I hear you guys talk about it, even though it was, years before I was born, I can really relate to it, because I'm like, oh, I felt those same feelings, had those same experiences, even though it was later and with the special edition ones.
Right, but they had the toys, like it was just different,
yep.
and like so you got to kind of watch the movies. You had the merchandise available to you. It's like it's basically like you had a reboot experience and you got to skip the dark times.
Exactly. There were a couple of years of dark times, but nothing too substantial. I just remember, because like I said, after I'd seen them, I was like, okay, I need all these toys, and we grew up in the hood, right? And we had a Target, but we had to drive like closer to the city to get to like the good Target,
mm-hmm.
And I remember it was huge, and we went in there, and you know how like you go down a normal toy aisle and there's just the shelves on either side.
Yeah.
It was one of those, and I may be misremembering, and this might have been like how it looked to me as a kid, but the entire wall was only Star Wars, and they had just and this was by when they had switched Power of the Force to the green card,
mm-hmm.
and it was just like every figure, every wave, just
right.
like hundreds and hundreds, and I was just like, wow, like it was just like this magic,
that this hasn't come up a lot, but that was one of the things that the original Kenner line did that was kind of beautiful, was like the first wave of figures didn't end their production run until they ended their last production run. Like they were constantly releasing all
mm-hmm.
of the waves all the time. So like,
yeah, and it was somewhat like that with the prequel stuff too, because I just remember never not being able to find a figure that I was looking for, just
Yeah.
because of the volume of it. It was
Right.
so much, and that might be why they're so cheap to get nowadays.
Yeah.
But it was that volume that we don't see anymore.
There was a lot of revision cases, so you had all the repacks all the time. And when you're talking about having a whole wall of Star Wars figures, they really were like that, especially in a Toys R Us. And then they'd have those big metal bins. And I just remember all kinds of deals, like, buy one, get ones, or buy two, get one for $1. And it was fantastic.
Yeah,
like,
I
I had
remember
tons
those.
of stormtroopers.
How many CO?
those.
How many CO Bibbles did you have?
No, one.
That was a dude from the Phantom Menace, right?
Yeah, with the beard.
Yeah, the hologram. Oh no, he wasn't.
A communication
hologram,
disruption means
Only
we
one
didn't
thing.
pay our phone bill.
Invasion. Yeah. But yeah, I just remember being struck, and I mean that there's nothing better as a young kid than that. And it's funny because like we were in school, and it's all like all the kids were into Star Wars too, and it's like we got to bring our toys to school, which I thought was weird. And I just remember like being in the hallway for like large amounts of time, like trading figures with kids. And I was like, how did I have this much unstructured time in school?
Oh, you were a toy
to do all this.
You were a toy trader. I got to put my foot up my kid's backside for that now, because they're like, because we spend $30 on something, and they come home with like this something out of like the little gumball machine, and I'm
Some
like,
bullshit.
you cannot do this.
Yeah. But that was what it was all about, man.
So yeah, continue.
Well, I was gonna say, there was a couple. That was in '97, right?
Correct.
Especially,
Yep.
So we had some time until the Phantom Menace, and in between then, I was still really into it. But then, like, I'd have a phase here and there where I would get into something else, and this is like, I don't know, like your childhood. A lot of times it seems like a blur, but then there's like these memories that you can just like that you have like a photo memory of, right? And I remember I'd gotten into some other shit, and I was like, I saw my box of Star Wars Micro Machines, and I was like, oh shoot, I haven't played Star Wars in a few months, right? So I get them out, and I had this like other Micro Machine boat, and I put like Obi-Wan and Luke and the whole crew in there, and I was like having like they're at Hoth, and then they went to like Endor, and they're going these places, but like in my mind, I was like, okay, they're gonna get on this boat and like drive over go over the ocean to go to Endor, and then go over the other ocean. And then I was like, oh shoot, wait, they're not going like on different continents, like they're on different planets. And it struck me that I had like forgotten that about Star Wars, and I had like this like profound feeling of shame like about myself. Like that I had like forgotten that, or that I was like playing it wrong for a minute. And it's like, is that feeling like when you get in trouble and your parents like tell you that they're disappointed in you? I was like, oh man, like I felt like I had like let Star Wars down, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It was funny. And then I guess the next Phantom Menace, right?
Yep.
The trailer.
Yeah, buddy.
And it's funny, like you bring it up a lot. There's always like the stories that people tell of it, like before you saw it yourself, or
Yeah.
because
How was
one of my other brothers,
Oh,
what are you gonna say?
No, he saw it first, I guess.
Yeah, he saw the trailer first and described it to me, and it was like what you picture in your head, you know.
Yeah.
So all these different possibilities, and then we had gone and we my oldest brother who kind of got me into it, he would take me, like we would just see bullshit movies just to see the trailer, and like sometimes we wouldn't even stay for the movie. We're just like, let's go watch the Phantom Menace trailer.
What do you remember most about that trailer? Because I have 3 very distinct memories of that trailer.
So the
Good question.
the Gungans when they were walking out of the fog.
Yep, dude, that's
Yeah,
one of
because
mine as well.
Yeah, because for some reason to me that just looked so different, like the way it was shot, the use of CGI, it just looked so different than anything we had seen before, you know. And it's just like all the questions, like who are these dudes? What planet are they on?
And like the fog and the ambiance, it had like you say, like this mystery to it, and like
Yeah.
I would have never expected them to be as they were based on that footage.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, it almost looked like how you picture like some tribe.
I was just gonna say a savage tribe.
Yeah, and I was like, who are these dudes?
Yeah.
You know, and then they turned out to be just goofballs. But
it's interesting. It's interesting that so much of the character design is still dead to rights with episode 1. Do you know what I mean? Like, you take those same character designs and you give them different personalities, and it would have fixed, I think, a lot of the kind of criticisms that surround that movie in regard to the CGI characters.
Yeah, because and I'm sure we'll get to it, but it's just that the over the top personalities, you know.
Yeah.
And then again from the trailer, the seeing Darth Maul for the first time.
Yeah, buddy.
He just came out looking like the devil.
Yep.
You know, and I just thought that was so cool, man.
So those were 2 of mine as well, and then the third one that always like that I was just like, I need to know everything about this, was that Padme in that red dress, like in the castle, like looking out of the window, and the window light like coming in on her, like just like like majestic and regal. You know, it was just like, what is this?
And
you guys got me for 2 of those. The third one for me is when you see Maul's ship come in, like TIE fighter sound, and you get the Imperial music.
Yeah, and it even from the back had that kind of silhouette of like the interceptor almost.
Yep.
Yeah, or Vader's.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I still get that feeling to this day.
I do too.
When I see a trailer, and even watching that's a good trailer.
It's one of the best. It's one of the best.
But it's so cool, just like when you see it, even the new trailers, like the smattering of images and characters, and just that wonder, you know, how are these going to play out?
Yep.
But yeah, so that came out when I was in 3rd grade, and I think we saw it at midnight, and it was cool because I went and stayed the night at my brother's house, and then we didn't see it at midnight. We saw it like first thing the next morning. And like my mom was cool because like if it was Star Wars, she would like let me skip school for it and everything.
Nice.
So we did that, and it knocked my socks off. You know,
Yeah.
I was too young to see some of the flaws in it. I was just head over heels, man.
Yeah, I got to skip.
Love with it.
I got to skip school for one movie, and it was Backdraft because my dad was a fireman.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember you saying that before. There you go, man.
So he took me out of school, and I wasn't allowed to tell my mom because like she would have taken him to like court for custody stuff, like you know.
Oh yeah.
But like
you gotta be careful.
But it, like that's the only one that that movie's still special to me for that reason. Like that's my brother. God damn it. Anyway, so then you see the Phantom Menace. And you get to skip school, and you get to see it. You see it with your family, or your brother at least. And what is your initial reactions being in 3rd grade? You know, like, which is still crazy to me. Like, when you say that, like, I was in 3rd grade when I saw Phantom Menace. I'm like, oh, my God.
I was, like I said, I was blown away. You know, in my mind at the time, it was perfect.
Right.
It was exactly what I wanted to see. I think it just kind of expanded that world that we saw.
Yeah.
You know, I always compare it to after watching the prequels, you kind of watch the original trilogy. It's like looking off a skyscraper with, you know, those binoculars that you like put the quarter in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like looking at New York City like that. That's like the original trilogy. You get to see through this certain kind of closed vision. And then with the prequels, when you take your head away and look around, and you see like the vast expanse of it all.
Dude, that's a really good analogy.
And that's one of my. I mean, we'll get to it, but it is one of my criticisms of the new trilogies. I do feel like we're again looking at it through those binoculars. And when I watched the original trilogy, I never felt that way. But it's only after the prequels that you feel that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because the original trilogy is like this really kind of intimate story that takes place in this vast world, and then you could even make the argument that the prequels lack the intimate story and really take time to world build and show you the vastness of the universe. And it's like, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I don't think I need even as much world building. I just want to see some things just to get a sense of like almost like getting your bearings, if that makes sense. Just kind of figure out where we are. And
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Now, so you love it, and what's interesting is I love Phantom Menace too. I mean, I love it now, but
yeah, I do too. I still do.
I'm definitely aware of its faults now. Whereas when I first saw it, I was just smitten by it, and I think I was so far, in withdrawal of Star Wars that they could have done anything, and I would have been like, perfect. But at your age, seeing it, where I feel like that movie is definitely aimed at your demographic. How long was it before you started to see some kind of chinks in the armor, so to speak?
Well, even then, I thought I didn't like Jar Jar. Uh-huh. I thought he was silly to the point where it didn't feel like Star Wars to me. Mm-hmm. Even Yoda in Empire, he's kind of camping, kind of off the rails at parts, but I think it's enough. I think that's kind of enough of what I needed. I thought, and I don't mind humor in a quote unquote serious movie, but even at that age, I was like, he's kind of, I'm not crazy about him. Right. He's kind of over the top. But probably was when Batman Begins came out, and then The Dark Knight after that. Mm-hmm. We're kind of going off a side tangent, so I'll try to be fast, but those two movies ruined movies for me for a long time. Because I was like, these are perfect. Mm-hmm. And I wanted that level of movie from everything, right? Right. So I saw a lot of stuff probably and this was kind of leading up to Dark Knight Rises. I saw a lot of movies in that time that I didn't enjoy or didn't appreciate because they weren't at that level. And I kind of regret that. Because I kind of missed out on some of the early Marvel stuff that now I love. But it was when I became more critical and I could see these characters that I loved represented in a mature, in a more serious tone. When that's not necessarily the best thing for every character or every franchise. So probably around like 2005, after Revenge of the Sith came out, when I was kind of like, okay, well, these aren't what they were to me at that age. I still loved them. I still appreciated them. And I still loved Star Wars. But it was probably at that point, you see different representations of characters and kind of changes your perspective a little bit. Yeah.
So that actually makes a lot of sense. And I think we could probably dive into that for an hour on its own.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
But let's move on to Attack of the Clones.
So I'm trying to think. I was in 6th grade when that came out, and before that, I remember it was the first time for me, like as a kid, getting on the computer and like looking for toys. In the whole, I just looking at pictures of toys, right, that were being like shown at some conventions or whatever. And I remember the Fourth Friday experience. I don't know if they did it. Did they do that with Phantom Menace?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I didn't get anything then. I just got all my figures after that. But
I was going to say, I think it was called Midnight Madness at the time, not Fourth Friday.
I think you're right.
Okay. That sounds right. But for episode 2, I was aware of it, and I was like always I would just sit in the front of the computer and look at these pictures, and I was like infatuated. Do you remember that episode 2 Yoda that came out that he came with like that command thing that he stood on?
Yes.
And he had a lightsaber with him, which I thought was cool. So I was like, I have to have that Yoda figure. And my brother, he was gonna go. He was like, I'm going to this Midnight Madness. Give me a list of what you want and give me some money, and I'll get all this stuff. And like so I started like saving my money, like as a little kid doing it. And I think I ended up saving like $40 or something, so I could get the figures. I think were like $5 at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
When I can't remember. I remember
came out.
I remember the Power of the Force 2 prices, but not the prequel prices, and they were probably in that $3.99, $4.99 range,
yeah,
for sure.
But I remember, and it's funny because just to go back, I remember the Phantom Menace figures at FAO Schwartz. I remember buying the cloaked Darth Maul, and it was like $13.99, and I think they were just like price gouging, man.
Oh yeah,
and I paid that too.
That's why you don't see that store anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
that's why I haven't seen that store in 20 years.
I had that big lizard creature from it was the FAO Schwartz exclusive.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So like, let me ask you a question about Attack of the Clones, and because I always have to ask everyone this, but what was just because I feel like the kind of thoughts surrounding it have changed like drastically, and I think they've changed within like the last 10 years, honestly. But Yoda with the lightsaber, what was your impressions of that? So
if I get dementia and forget 99% of my life, mm-hmm. I will remember that moment. Right. It was insane. So, and I wanted to bring this up. Going to the theater to see Episode 2, I was a little bit older, so I was a little bit more aware of my surroundings and whatever. But that was the first time I got like a sense of community within the fandom, because I just remember we got to the theater like 2 hours early, and they just let us in and go sit down, and like we were just like talking to strangers, like we didn't know these people, right. But we all love Star Wars, so we had some connective tissue in that regard, and I was like, this is awesome, like why can't it be like this, so easy to connect with people, at the time I was in 6th grade and my interests were changing, but I remember when Yoda pulled out the lightsaber, I mean, I was squealing like a little girl. Like everyone was standing up and clapping, and that's a big part for me. Is like whenever these big movies come out, like I could get them on Cody or whatever, but it's important for me to go to the theater to get that experience of people flipping out, being head over heels excited about it, and I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I was like, this is insane.
I also want to piggyback on something you said, because you said this is the first time that you looked at toys online. And this movie has a digital kind of benchmark in my life as well, where this was the first trailer I watched online. And,
yeah, me too.
And I remember like clicking it and
loading that bitch for 3 hours.
Yeah, dude. And I had to let it go overnight. Like, because it was taking so long. Like, so I woke up the next morning to watch it, and like it was like download failed or whatever. So I had to start it again. No. And when I started it again, I was like sitting at the computer, and it would download like 20 seconds or 10 seconds, and like so
inch by inch.
I would watch it inch by inch and run it back each time, and it was like, and it had the Vader breathing in the beginning, and it would just be like, and I'm like, God bless. Wait, you know what I mean?
Come on.
And then I'd wait like a few minutes. I'd run it back.
And man, with my internet, I'd be doing that. But then if somebody called the house, it would kick you off.
Oh, wow.
And you'd have to start all over again. But yeah, and because I remember I looked at the toys, and I had like scraped some money together, and then I gave the money to my brother, and I was like, okay, man, like here's the list of toys that I want. Yoda was at the top. I really wanted that Yoda. And then, so he got them. And then I went and like I used to stay at his house a lot. Like he used to like keep me for the weekend, like would take me to do nerdy stuff, just because like my dad wasn't as much into it and my mom wasn't. And he was like, all right, here's like the stuff I got. And he just got me like every fucking figure. Like he got me like 20 something figures, like way more than like the money I gave him. And then I didn't even realize it, but the Yoda wasn't in like the pile of toys he got me. And I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't like, oh, Yoda's not here, just because I had 20 new figures in front of me. It was like a kid on Christmas. And then he was like, hey, will you get me a cup out of this cabinet? And I went to get it, and he had the Yoda setting up in there, and I was like, oh man, I was like all excited and stuff. But yeah, him pulling out the lightsaber, I freaked out. Everyone in the theater freaked out, and I will remember that moment for the rest of my life. And even today, I mean, the funniest thing about that is when
that part?
Dooku, yeah,
that's Gort's favorite part. That's Gort's favorite. That's Gort's favorite.
Is when it's like Count Dooku like shoots the lightning at him, and Yoda catches it in his hand, and then like he moves his cloak and like he puts it in his pocket. I don't know. I don't know if you caught that. He's like, I'm just gonna save that for later.
It's like it's like somebody blew him a kiss. He's like, I'll put this.
He's like, I'm gonna save that for later when I'm alone.
Yeah.
See what this Force lightning's all about.
It is interesting. Like within, also another one of those things. I feel like within like the last 5 to 10 years, like it's become kind of vogue to say that it's the worst one of the prequels. You know, like whereas before people used to say the order of them was the opposite of their release, so it was 3, 2, 1, and then now I feel like people have like kind of gone to this 3, 1, 2 ranking regarding those movies. But I still have like a lot of great moments. Like I love like
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, go for it.
Maybe as a whole, it's not the best movie, but it might have better moments than some of the better movies.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. I mean, Yoda with the lightsaber, Obi-Wan fighting Jango Fett, all the Jedi when they come back to Geonosis, like that like those moments to me make that movie to where I'll take the good with the bad, because the good is really, really good, and the bad is pretty bad.
There's this one scene in it where Yoda looks at Palpatine. There's a couple of those throughout 2 and 3 if you watch it close enough, but like Yoda's kind of onto him. Like he knows something's not right.
That kind of skeptical look that he gives him.
Yeah, I love those little beats. It's one of the things I love about Star Wars is like these little like minor like microscopic arguments or like theories that people get into. Like
that's the fun of it.
Like my buddy Mario and I used to argue all the time about whether or not Qui-Gon knew that the Handmaiden was the real Padme the entire time.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. I think he did. I don't think you could get shit past him
because when
he's too sharp.
When they reveal it at the in front of Boss Nass. When they reveal that, Obi-Wan's like super shocked, but Qui-Gon like gives him a smirk. Like, you didn't see that?
Yeah.
Come on, man. I trained you better than that.
You have much to learn, young one.
There's another argument to be had there, too. And not to say that he didn't know, but I also like to think he was pretending. Like, just
pretending that he...
Like you know, off camera, like his eyes twitch back and forth like he's looking around like, I knew. And then he puts on that face.
Yeah.
Like, I just like the idea that Qui-Gon is this big asshole. That's one of the reasons that I enjoy that character so much.
Yeah.
But like, not saying that's true. I think Bobby's right. But
yeah, because
I also like that concept.
Because there's that other scene where, she's saying how we shouldn't be trusting our fate to strangers or whatever. And he's like, the Queen trusts my judgment, and so should you.
Yeah.
It's like he's like edging her to like, go ahead, say it. Come forward.
Mm-hmm.
You know you want to say
it. It kind of uses her power against her.
Exactly.
Or use that disguise against her. And she can't say nothing. So yeah, episode 2 came out. Like I said, those moments I think were the best. And it was cool because I went out in the stores and I bought every one of the Jedi that I could.
Yeah, dude.
And those sculpts on the episode 2 figures were out of control.
Yeah.
Good.
I still look at like the ones they did of like Anthony Daniels and Ahmad Best from the bar. And like they're tremendous,
suit, right?
Yeah. They're both really well done.
I think as far as lines go, that out of the 3 prequel ones, I think the episode 2 lines were the best.
I agree.
They weren't always the best action figures, but they still look good. Like even today, like when I get them out and look at them, I'm like, dang man, they knocked it out the park.
It was like almost a action figureless element to them because they were kind of like statues with moving arms. Like,
well, it was
very
that was in the
McFarlane. It was during the McFarlane.
Yeah, I was gonna say
era.
that was the McFarlane era, man. That's what everyone I think emulated for a while, which they luckily got away from.
Bunch of aliens with lightsabers, bunch of McFarlane movie maniacs.
That'd be a maniac to get on those lines, huh?
But yeah, I think that like they captured once again. They captured like the allure and the mystique, the mystery. Like, who is this blue Jedi chick and this green one and this? Like, who are these people? Which like I got the same feeling in the cantina. I got the same feeling at Jabba's palace. Like they tapped into that again there.
Yeah, and like I said, even with a lot of the bad in the movie, and even again as a kid, the good parts kind of just washed out the bad. Like even as a kid, like some of the dialogue, I was like, yeesh. Like as a 12-year-old, I'm thinking this. Like,
well, and you got Padme in the black dress, so
that made it worth it. That made the dialogue more palatable.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
she could have said whatever she wanted, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's move on to the third installment. And I want to start with this because this is another one where, similarly to, I think, there's very few Star Wars films that I put in this pocket, but I put Episode 1 in this pocket, I put 3, I put Rogue One and Last Jedi. And that is, this movie had trailers that had me by the balls the entire rollout.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, I remember that Adam TiVo'd the first trailer, like, because it was coming.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was coming on. It was like a known thing. Like, the Episode 3 trailer will be revealed during The Simpsons or whatever it was. So like he TiVo'd the Simpsons episode so that we could run the trailer back like over and over and over again.
And you just stayed at his house for a month.
Yeah, well, dude,
watching the trailer.
And he hated the prequels pretty much from the giddy up. But,
oh man, wow.
But when that trailer hit, he was like, all right, this might save it all because it was just so well done.
Dude, they can make a good trailer.
Yeah, they definitely know their way around a trailer. But anyway, so what were your thoughts kind of on that movie?
I loved it. Again, it's like I feel like I'm a broken record here, but I loved it. It was Star Wars. I do have a hard time. I'll say this now to get out the way. I do have a hard time looking at Star Wars objectively, just because I'm too attached to it.
Yeah,
right.
Same.
So it's like if I was worked in a newspaper and they were like, "Hey, write a review of Rise of Skywalker," I'd be like, "I can't do it. Like I can't do it objectively."
See, I think I can. Well, I mean, many would argue it, but I think I can see the flaws. But a lot of times,
me too.
I feel like I can explain the flaws to a point where it makes sense to me. And
it's because you don't want to see them.
Well, I think. Well, let me say this. I think because at the end of the day, I always like the overall story, and like that's what matters to me. Like I have issues with Endgame, and I can even all of my issues in Endgame I can explain away with no problem. I have issues with Black Panther, but all my issues in Black Panther I can explain away. The problem is that at the end of the day, with Endgame specifically, I'm not sure I like the story. So even though I can explain my problems, it doesn't solve the problem. And Star Wars is the opposite, where I kind of always like the story, but some of the issues I have, I definitely notice, but I can explain them away, and then it's kind of inconsequential because I end up liking the story.
Yeah, and I think going into it, we all knew what to expect. I remember I was in high school. I was a freshman in high school at the time, and I thought it was cool that they made it rated PG-13 instead of just PG. Yep. But and that was the first one, I think.
Yeah.
Until The Last Jedi, or probably
Rogue One.
Rogue One came out before that, right? Yeah. But yeah, I loved it. And we all knew what was going to happen, and just seeing it the way it happened, even with some of the dialogue in it. It's because I was watching the end fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and I feel like when Hayden Christensen is giving it all he's got, he's great.
Yeah.
But when he's more subdued, he comes off as like very wooden.
Yeah, I have a theory that Hayden Christensen's poor performances are probably due more to Lucas than to Hayden.
Oh, exactly. So Lucas, and you could say this about any person in any profession, whatever profession you do, there are going to be things that you're better at than others. He's a masterful technical director.
Right.
His vision that he has. I mean, watch at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, that space battle, like that can only exist in very few people's minds, that vision. Right. And I know, he's taken from concept artists, but to communicate what he sees in his head to people, to make that sequence, which is still one of my favorites in all of Star Wars.
Yeah.
That's another one of his strengths, but writing dialogue and then directing actors might not be the best.
I agree.
And it's funny, in the prequels, you got Ewan McGregor Liam Neeson, Natalie Portman, Ian McDermott, all fantastic actors that probably don't need that much coaching from the director to at least be competent. Hayden Christensen might have needed that little bit of extra help, but I think George Lucas looks great, sounds great,
faster and more intense.
Yeah.
But to piggyback off what you were saying, like even though you had these concept artists like Doug Chiang, am I saying that? I'm not sure if I'm saying that properly, but like, and of course Ralph McQuarrie and all these people, but like the fact that he can walk into that room and see concept art literally lathered all over the wall, and like within 5 seconds he's like, it's this, and this. Like
he knows exactly what he wants.
Exactly what he wants.
He can picture that, and that is what in my mind makes you an artist, is that you can see in your mind the end result of a project, a painting, a sculpture, or in this case a movie. Right. Where some people don't have that gift. So it's like you could take drawing classes or sculpting classes, but if you don't have that vision, you'll never be like a great artist per se. But because I like the scene where he's really going after Obi-Wan and screaming at him, like when he's lying there after he gets all his body parts cut off, and he screams like, "I hate you." Like I buy the shit out of that.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think whenever he goes kind of full bore, and I think he is very believable to me.
I buy when he sees Obi-Wan in the ship, like, and he has this like instant betrayal. I buy all that, like not even necessarily like the dialogue, which I do.
No,
like,
it's his expressions.
It's his expressions. You can see it on his face that he now feels betrayed by the two people he felt he could really trust.
Yep. And he felt, Padme came and he's like, okay, it's all like everything's gonna be okay.
Right.
Which is probably the first time he's ever felt like that in his life.
I agree.
And then he goes from that to seeing Obi-Wan, and it changes so quick, and his whole world kind of just comes collapsing around him again.
That whole like, liar! You brought him here. You brought him here to kill me.
Like that shit. I love that.
Like, I don't
think that's bad at all. I'm like, and he's given it all he has, and I think that's his strength.
And I also think that when you are a person and you rise to a certain level, and it could be at work, it could be in politics, like in real proper power, it could be, in a social circle, it could be whatever you want. But when you rise up the ranks, when you climb a ladder like Anakin has, he's like one of the last surviving Jedis as far as he knows at this point. Like he's one of the most powerful people in the universe. A certain amount of paranoia goes hand in hand with that.
Oh yeah.
And to see that paranoia and that distrust and then that also that hurt and betrayal all come through in that moment. I buy every element of it. I really do
too. And I think we'll certainly get back to this later, a lot of the criticisms people give it, I think, are kind of nitpicky because I think it's cool to hate on them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So, and it's even any movie I watch, I look at it as a whole, and I judge it on how I felt after the movie.
Well, it's very easy to have popular opinion. It's easy. It takes little to no effort. It's having unpopular opinion that's hard.
Yeah, because you're defending it all the time.
So and I've been through it. I feel like I'm seasoned in this game now. Where I've been through it with BVS. I've been through it with Last Jedi. I've been through it with the prequels. I've been through it with Dark Knight Rises. I've been through it so many times. I'm going through it now with Endgame, where it's just it's exhausting.
Well, you almost feel like it's like you get to the point where you're feel like a tinfoil hat dude.
Right.
Like put tape over your webcam. The government's watching.
so let me before we move into the sequel stuff, because we have a lot that we want to kind of talk about. I think all of us here have kind of been itching to talk about the sequel era stuff, but most of us, Star Wars is this childhood thing, and most of us are older than you. So the original kind of time frame ends up taking up so much space, but we have the luxury with you to kind of jump into the kind of end stuff. So let me kind of run through a couple things. I know that you are a reader of the kind of current novels and such, right?
Yeah.
Did you get into any of the EU stuff back in the day? Because that would have been a bit more of a commitment for a younger lad.
So I've read a lot of the older EU stuff, but within the last 3 or 4 years.
Gotcha.
I didn't read. I don't think the only books I read as a kid were like in elementary school, and they were like those little kid books. Like there's this one, like with like Jabba's brother or cousin or something who had a beard on the cover.
Yeah,
that I read as a little kid.
Zorba the Hutt.
Yeah. Like I read stuff like that, but I didn't read any of the older EU stuff until recent.
I love Gort's wealth of very specific, obscure knowledge regarding this franchise. Like, I love it.
He's like pinpricks this part of your brain that like unlocks the memory.
Yeah. Where I'm like, that dude that's got an ear for a nose. It's like, oh yeah, you're talking about Caliphus. Dude, I don't know. Ear nose. That's his name to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you got into that later. So we'll talk about that. We'll kind of compare those. What about Clone Wars?
I remember seeing the movie. I went and saw the movie in theaters.
I did too.
And that was a weird time because, and then even with episode 3, I was really, really closeted about being interested in this stuff. It wasn't, at least in where I was, it wasn't as accepted to be into it like it is nowadays. Cause I played sports. Like I was like fairly popular in high school. Like I was like fucking prom king and shit, but it's like, meanwhile I'm at home playing with all these action figures, and it's like, I didn't tell anybody ever. Like I thought it was really weird. And I remember, and I saw the Clone Wars movie. I was in college, or I was like about to start college, and I remember we were at this party, and I got fucking wasted. Or I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss. My bad.
You're good. Yeah, it's fine. You've been doing it the whole show, but it's fine.
Oh jeez. I had a plan. I was like,
I think Gort and I the whole show were like, we should have told him. We should have told him in the back of our heads.
Oh man, my bad.
But you know what? Too, when people ask, we tell them what we tell them, but probably. I speak worse than anybody.
I don't know. I might take you to task on that.
On the show.
Oh yeah. I agree. All right, continue. I'm sorry.
So I had this plan. I was like, all right, we're going to go to this party. And they lived next to a Walmart, which we didn't have one by where I lived. And Walmart had that blue trooper. You know what I'm talking about? It was like a Walmart exclusive. Like for the clone, like for when the Clone Wars movie came out.
Oh, like the Ark? Was it like an Ark? Like the?
No, it was just like one of Anakin's troopers, one of the 501st.
Blue markings, but it wasn't like
not all
blue. Yeah.
My bad.
I know you're talking about.
And I got up. I woke up before everyone else like woke up, and I drove to the Walmart and like just bought all the figures. Even like the Captain Rex helmet, and I just like hid them in the trunk of my car. I was like, I can't let anyone see this stuff. and I was like, why did I do this stuff? Like now I don't care anymore, obviously, but depending on where I'm at. And I remember watching it and being like, oh, it's okay.
And what about the show?
So the show I didn't get into until probably season. How many seasons did they have? 6? 5?
I can't even keep track.
5 on air.
There was 5, and then the Lost Episodes DVD, right?
So Lost Episodes DVD and Netflix.
Right.
Gotcha,
now we're getting 7th season.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The movie kind of turned me off to where I was like, I don't need to watch the show.
Yeah, the movie turned me off.
I still bought the toys just because I love the designs of them. I love when you can take a cartoon or a CGI show like that and translate the toys. Like I've always been impressed by that. So I didn't start watching the show until like season 4 because it came on Cartoon Network either before or after Young Justice, and I was just kind of watched it because it was on.
Interesting. All right, so let's go ahead and transition into the sequel era. We have about an hour left, so we can kind of really dig into this stuff. So I'm gonna let you take the reins. You start where you want to start, and we'll follow your lead.
Yeah, so when Disney first announced that they had purchased Lucasfilm, I was head over heels. I was like, they make good movies.
Right.
Like Disney just generally, sure, there might be some bad ones, but generally they make good movies. They put out a good product. I was excited, and I was excited just to have more Star Wars. And I think even, I don't know if I was at this point yet. I'll get to that later. But and then the first trailer came out, and I'm just sitting there at my computer crying like a baby, watching the
Right.
Millennium Falcon fly around, because we got that trailer like a year out.
Yeah, it was November the year
Yeah.
prior.
But I think that was good, given I think people maybe had apprehensions about it.
Dude, I
being
think
in new hands.
I think Force Awakens had the best rollout of any of the Disney era Star Wars.
Well, you couldn't escape it. It
Yeah.
was everywhere.
Yep.
You know, it was everywhere.
You know, something just jumped into my mind, and I wonder if it's why they can't always do a proper rollout. But look what happened with Rogue One, where 50% of that trailer never made it to the actual movie.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder whether it's getting publicized or not. How much of that is actually still going on?
Yeah.
I don't suspect exactly.
I know
that to be
Marvel.
the case,
Marvel does that a lot
Yeah.
with their trailers, either putting something that's not in it, or maybe like removing a character or adding one in.
But they
later.
do some of that intentionally.
Yeah. It's just to I guess not spoil anything.
Like with Star Wars, or at least Rogue One, that was not intentionally. That was, they dropped the ball and they had to spend money.
Yep.
Then they did
Yep.
the same thing with Solo.
Yeah, I think, but I also think that like they didn't know. So with Force Awakens, they had the luxury of Force Awakens being the only thing on the plate. I think they didn't.
Yeah.
I think they didn't know how to roll out Rogue One coming off of Force Awakens and getting ready to start the Force Awakens like home video rollout. And then once Rogue One hit, they ran into the same problem with Last Jedi. And then between Last Jedi and Solo, the expanse of time was so limited. And I think that's because they were trying to see if they could do, you know, the Marvel method of like 2 or 3 movies a year and see if it would work. But they didn't know how to promote it and also give Last Jedi time to breathe. So I think that it comes from a lack of experience with Lucasfilm putting out so much content in a given time, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder if they worry about audience confusion as far as jumping around from different areas in time.
I'm sure they do, because corporate people have no idea how the masses consume this stuff.
Yeah, and
I
think
there is confusion too, but I don't find that as much with the Marvel movies that just come, 3 a year sometimes, versus a Star Wars, you get them every couple of years and people still don't know what order they go in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been around for decades.
Well, I got a little bit. Well, I think that's because most of the Marvel stuff is kind of, it doesn't matter what time it's in. But the reason why the reason why I say that is because I did pick up on a little confusion regarding Captain Marvel, but that's the one that's like way out of sequence.
1990 what?
Right.
Yeah, and with Star Wars, when they're jumping around to different eras, I'm sure seeing The Force Awakens, like just as maybe a really uneducated casual fan, when they go to Rogue One and there's stormtroopers again, they're like, wait, what? I thought we beat these guys. And then I'm sure they can figure it out.
Right.
But I don't over the course of the movie.
I don't think Star Wars allots for the kitchen table talk. And what I mean by that is, I don't think that Lucasfilm is taking into consideration that for every person that asks the question of where does this fit in, there's usually 2 to 3 people in any social circle that fills those people in. You know what I mean? Like I see it. I see it all the time. And I don't always have to be the educator. I see other people step in like, no, so this takes place, like, and I often hear like this sort of terminology, like consider Rogue One 4.95 or something like that. Like, so I see the people, like the culture working it out. I just don't think Lucasfilm accounts for it.
Yeah, and I think even if you don't have those people, I think it's just as simple as a Google search. When does Rogue One take place?
Yeah, but never underestimate the laziness of humanity. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, Force Awakens came out, and I was all in on the hype train. We saw it. I went with my brother again. We haven't missed a Star Wars release since Phantom Menace, so that's awesome. It's like always a special thing. And he brings his kids now, and once my kids are a little bit older, they'll be along too. But and I loved it. Going back, I think it hasn't aged as well. Even in the few years that it's been out, just because. And I guess I'll just get into a couple criticisms I have. I think rely too much on us finding things out later, which of course we know it's a trilogy and 2 more movies are coming. But I think they played too much on that, whereas A New Hope didn't really at all. You could watch that movie on its own and get a good story out of that.
Yeah, it's the kind of the JJ approach to things, though, isn't it? And
yeah,
generally speaking,
you're in it for the long game.
Yeah, and I mean the it's kind of the publicized YouTube stuff, which makes me nauseous. But the mystery box, he does rely on the mystery box of and he does a good job of it. To be fair,
yeah, definitely.
Like with setting up all of these questions to drive people nuts until he figures out how to answer them.
Yeah, but then it relies so much on that payoff being good,
and he didn't consider that he'd ever have to answer them.
Yeah, that's true. But even that being said, I loved it. It was a great story. I like the new characters that they introduced. I love seeing the old crew.
You know what? But, just because I want to kind of open it up into a discussion, but like I love being able to have like the hours and hours and hours of discussion and guessing and theorizing about stuff like that he set up, like the force back scene, as I call it. Like,
yep.
Like how much fun I've had in my life due to that sequence of just talking to other fans or casuals about what it could potentially mean.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
So yeah, I guess that's something I didn't think about, and that to me, a lot of people or have a bad taste in their mouth about all the speculation and everything, but that is what makes it fun, and I think that really does build community with people.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
As long as it's tasteful and people don't get their feelings involved. But
what were your
that goes.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll get there soon. What were your What were your takeaways from Force Awakens? Like biggest pros and cons after seeing it?
Well, see, that's where I'm kind of torn because I don't want to feel this way, but I enjoyed seeing the older characters maybe more than I enjoy the new characters because I still feel like maybe I'm watching these movies to find out what happens.
I think that's
with
valid.
Episode 9 to find out what happens to Leia. Not that I don't think Finn, Poe, and Rey are good characters. I'm just not as attached to them.
I think there's an argument.
It's a time spent.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think there's also an argument to be made that, like, does what happen? Are we we have so much information on Finn, for instance. Like, do we care where he goes after this? Like, because we kind of have his story is kind of done. He went from running to being willing to sacrifice himself for everything. Like, that's it. There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, that's where. All right, well, we'll get to that later, but that is something that kind of left me confused. But and even as much of a fan of the new stuff as I am, I do feel like I'm watching it to see what happens to the old crew. But I don't have a problem with it. It doesn't mean that I don't like the new characters. I think they're great. And then again, I'm going back to this, and I'm probably going to hit this a few more times. They got a new generation involved in Star Wars.
Yes, 100%.
So whether I like it or not, it doesn't freaking matter
100%
as much. And I'm not going to bash it because it gets more people involved in Star Wars, which means there's going to be more Star Wars, which is good for me. And even if I don't like anything that comes out, I want kids
absolutely
for the end of time to come back to this.
It's how the brand survives.
Yeah, and I want them to have the same experiences I did. I have so many good memories tied to Star Wars. I want that for future generations, whether I like it or not.
If they alienate the younger audience for the sake of pleasing the older audience, then the time frame of how that brand impacts the culture is limited.
Oh yeah, exponentially. And for me, it's like the original trilogy was what got me. That's always still there for me to go back to. So,
let me ask you about. Let me get back to the core question there, which was, so we all know that we had this strong attachment to the core characters, and we get to see them in the sequel era, which is kind of the payoff of the sequel era for better or worse. But aside from that, what were your kind of big pros and or cons take away from The Force Awakens, from this new exposure?
So, like, my cons, I kind of stated earlier, just the mystery stuff. I think it relies a lot on that, which is good and bad things. Like you said, the discussion aspect is great, but it has me concerned about the payoff. But the pros, I love Rey, Finn, Poe, and Kylo he's my favorite of the new crew.
Same.
And within maybe 30 minutes of screen time of that movie, I was like, he's more interesting than Darth Vader was at this point in the trilogy.
That's true. Like, Kylo was more interesting of a character at the end of 7 than Vader is at the end of 4.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And again, like at those points in time before you knew about the family stuff. But I think Adam Driver just knocks it out of the park.
Agreed.
I think he's unpredictable, which is, again, more interesting. And
I've gotten some serious, speaking of unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
And I'm exaggerating it just for kind of the emotional knee-jerk response, but I've often been quoted as saying, Adam Driver, he's like a really good dude, like out off camera, and then he's like, just think of him as like Keanu Reeves, but talented.
You're not wrong, man. You're not wrong.
But yeah. But no, and I don't mean that. Keanu Reeves is obviously talented. It's just, I just like the reaction it gets.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, what he brings to that character and the kind of the disposition that villain finds himself in is just, it's unique for Star Wars.
Well, and I think it's relatable too.
100%.
I think with episode 4, you related to Luke. That was the idea. He's the main character, to Han and the other cast. But I think what episode 7 did was they made even the main villain relatable, and I think that's important. And because people say like there's no villains and there's no heroes. It's just people with different agendas.
Right.
I think they kind of drove that home, and I think you're supposed to see a little bit. Everybody, I don't care who you are, has insecurities, and Kylo Ren definitely has some.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something that everyone should relate to, which again makes him a better character, because even though he's the quote unquote villain, you're invested to see what happens to him.
And it kind of cashes in, I think, like, and you could even argue heavy-handedly, and I'd be okay with that because Star Wars is kind of a heavy-handed franchise anyway.
Yep.
But it really cashes in on the original trilogy kind of, it's almost like the original trilogy put this ball on a tee for someone to knock out of the park, but of a lot of things that you encounter will depend on your personal point of view, and
Yep.
I think that it is the fulfillment of that sort of theme.
Yeah.
So let's continue. Then we have Rogue One.
Oh, loved it.
Yeah,
loved it.
Gort,
it's in my top 3.
Gort doesn't. Gort hates it.
No,
really?
I love that movie. My
we
favorite.
always give Russ the Muss a hard time because he hates it.
Really?
Yeah, because he'll say something on our show, and I'll be like, he doesn't matter. He doesn't like Rogue One. So shout out to him. We always give him a hard time.
Yeah, Russ is a good dude.
I loved it. I wish that we could get the original versions in some way, because I think that could have been a strength of these anthology movies, is to kind of play around in different genres.
Well, do you think that this does not? I mean, honestly,
I think that it
plays more like a war movie to me. Okay.
Yeah, I think that it does, but I'd like to see that. I think this is like they turned the volume up to 7.
Uh-huh.
I want to see a war movie at a 10.
I got you.
In the Star Wars universe.
I got you.
And again, they're playing a tough, or they're walking that tightrope, right? And they got to be really careful with what they do, which I do understand. But when the news came out about the reshoots and rewrites and things like that, I was really nervous. But I still love what we got. I love what we got.
Do you? What was your kind of so this is what I bump into more with Rogue One is that like I love Rogue One as well, but Rogue One to me has kind of the most bang for its buck from all of these new movies in terms of endearing characters to me.
Yeah, and they did it in one movie.
Yeah.
You know, they had 2.5 hours to tell this story.
No mystery.
Yeah.
No mystery where you're talking about how they were reliant on that with episode 7, which you're 100% right.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what when I compare the two, they're off like the pendulum swinging in kind of opposite ways on both of them. But I think I enjoy Rogue One better.
Right.
Because of that, because it's a one and done story.
Yeah. I would agree.
It relies on you knowing some of the lore, but I think even if you didn't, you would still enjoy it. And then the Vader scene at the end was comparable to Yoda pulling out the lightsaber, because I remember in the theater, I kept thinking that the movie was going to end like right when he pulled his Star Destroyer up, and I was like, oh man, that was good. And then like it just kept going, and I was like, oh my god. And then like he ignited his lightsaber, and I was like, oh, they're going to cut it here. That'd be cool. And then they just let it rip, and I was so happy for that. And I think they needed that, and that kind of, I wish that they would have had a scene like that in the original trilogy.
Right.
That would be great if they had thrown something like that back in. And the recent argument or discussion would be the fan film with Obi-Wan and Vader, the duel at the end of 4.
If they redid that scene with like the digital face mapping, I wouldn't have a problem with that.
I think if they redid it, it's weird. I wonder if it would still upset people that they've made more changes, but that would be one of the most necessary changes right from day one.
And I've always been surprised that they didn't, because even as a kid watching that, I was like, oh, this is okay. I wasn't like the lightsaber fighting part of it was the thing I was like the least interested in until when I saw Empire. But shoot, what was I gonna say?
Well, let's move on into the kind of like heavy meat and potatoes. For Last Jedi. Talk to me about. Let's start at the beginning with that one. So let's talk about the rollout for that, trailers and so forth.
Yeah. Well, for me, it even starts before that.
All right, let's do it.
You know, once the hype of the Force Awakens home release died down, and even before that, I started thinking out what I think might happen in the next movie. And then that turned into me tweaking it and replaying those thoughts into, well, this is what will happen in the next movie.
Right.
Which turned into me adding things in, taking some things out, replaying those thoughts again into, this is the only way the next movie would make sense. And it's like I played this mental game with myself, and I compare it to this. So I'm a beer drinker. I drink this beer called Stag, and it's like the stuff that like old black dudes drink or whatever. It's like, I love it. I could drink it like water. But if I sat down at McDonald's and I got an Egg McMuffin and I got a milk with it, if I took a drink of the milk and it was that Stag beer, I would reflexively spit it out.
Right.
Not because I don't like it, not because it's not my favorite beer, but because it wasn't what I had prepared myself for. So when the credits rolled on The Last Jedi, I was like, man, I don't know. You know, I didn't know how to feel about it. And then I saw that again with my brother. It was like a 45-minute drive from the movie theater. By the time I got home, I was like, okay, that's my favorite Star Wars movie, I think, because it
just
does
on the
take
drive home.
Yeah, and it takes some time to process it. And I don't think anybody should be allowed to see that movie once.
Right.
No.
And it really takes an open mind, which like I said, I didn't have, but at least like I was able to recognize it, and I don't have that approach going into other movies. When a movie comes out that I'm really looking forward to, I try to just not even think about it, because it makes me be more open to what I'm going to see. And it's I've heard people say this, it's not my story, it's their story to tell.
Right.
So,
you know, the I had a kind of almost the opposite reaction in a sense. I ended up at one of the same results, but close to the same result. But when I walked out of that movie, I was like, I love this, and I don't know why. And when I went and bought tickets for it the very next morning, and went and saw it again.
Yeah, I did too that weekend.
Yeah, and then it was on my third time seeing it that I was like, this is why I love this, and I was able to like clearly lay it out in my head. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But it was like I knew it was very fulfilling to me, but I couldn't put my finger on how or why. But it like you kind of hinted at, it took multiple viewings to like really kind of get my bearings regarding it.
Yeah, and for me, it's like and I think that what mostly led to that was, and which is something that I'm still kind of concerned about today, is where they ended up. But there's like, you have the Resistance, but there's like 6 dudes in it.
Right.
It's like, where can we go from here? But yeah, but again, kind of like with Attack of the Clones, but to a better extent, it had the best moments for me in all of Star Wars.
Yeah,
and it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't what I thought I wanted to see, but now I really do think that it is my favorite Star Wars movie.
So let's backtrack a little bit, and then we'll get to the why. But what did you think of the trailers and the marketing and the rollout for Last Jedi?
So the second trailer, was that the one where it started out and Kylo Ren was like looking through that window at the AT-MTs or whatever?
Yeah, that was the second one, I believe.
Okay, that's my favorite Star Wars trailer.
Interesting.
And wasn't that like right after Carrie Fisher died?
She died on my birthday.
Oh Jesus!
So,
happy birthday, Bobby.
Yep. We were actually going out to like a birthday lunch with Joe and Adam, and like en route to the restaurant, Joe says from the back seat, "I don't know if I should tell you this today, but Carrie Fisher died."
No.
No. Yeah, but so and then the proper trailer for it was in July or August of the following year.
Whenever her music kind of picks up in the trailer, and it's like anytime I see her on screen now, I'm just like a blubbering idiot.
Yeah.
But I remember that got to me, but I love that trailer. I thought the rollout was great, because I think they showed us enough. I
agree. And I there's one thing I remember about it is that Rian Johnson tweeted, "Do not watch the trailer. If you really want to sit down and digest this movie, do not watch the trailer." And then the trailer dropped.
Oh, okay.
And then the trailer dropped, and he tweeted out, he's like, "Never mind, the trailer's fantastic. Watch the trailer, please."
Yeah, because I wonder if he had seen a cut.
Well, I think that it's just that like the excitement of it finally hit him. You know what I mean? As the creator of it, because he actually took like a pretty proactive role with the fandom. Like when they had Celebration, he like stayed up till 3 or 4 in the morning, going around meeting people that were standing in line to see like. That dude's awesome. Yeah, he wanted to be endeared by that community.
Yeah, that's great. I respect him a lot for a lot of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into here in a second.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it. So let's start with this. Why do you think it's your favorite? What are the reasons?
I think it's the most beautifully shot Star Wars movie.
I agree.
I think Rian Johnson is. I want him to take it all over. I wanted him on episode 9.
I did too.
I think he gave us a different feel than we were used to. Just like I said, just beautiful shots. Like even the shit like Kylo Ren when he's flying his TIE fighter and it pans to him, his hand on the trigger, and Leia looking out at Crate. With that kind of cowl over her face.
The collar.
Yeah. And I grew up watching a lot of anime, and you can tell that Rian Johnson's a big anime fan just by a lot of the shots that kind of seem borrowed from that. And again, those are probably borrowed from Japanese samurai movies, but just like stuff like Kylo Ren looking down his lightsaber, and you can like just see his eyes. I love it all. I think that movie's beautifully done. And then just they addressed a lot of things going back to the prequels, and I think it did the best job of tying it all together. Where episode 7 kind of doesn't touch the prequels.
No.
But I think they do with Luke discussing his feelings about the Jedi, which are all really valid. I even like when Leia gets blown out of the command center or whatever, and she flies back in the ship. Like I thought that was great. Like even in theaters watching that, I was like, oh my god, she's strong in the Force, and like she doesn't use it like a Jedi would, but like in a survival situation like that, it makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I see. I'm okay with it making sense and all that too, but that's like the one shot that I'm like,
I think it's the way that she flies.
Correct.
It's almost like,
well, she's in this zero gravity environment. I mean, how's it gonna work?
I understand.
I don't know. And it's like one of those things like, I don't know how I do it better, but there is something about it. But even in the theater, like I watched that, but I kind of in the back of my head, I was like, people are going to complain about this, like even though I loved it.
But also, like I always end up at the same point regarding it, which is with her passing. Would I rather get her using this specific Force power, looking this specific way, or never get anything at all? And I always land at this Force power this way.
Yeah, me too. Because I think it's something that it wasn't addressed in Episode 7, but I didn't want it to be forgotten.
Right.
So I'm glad we got to see it, and I think it was a ballsy thing to do.
I agree.
And that's again what I do love about this movie is that almost everything they did was the ballsy thing to do. They had a lot of options to stay really safe with a lot of things, and they didn't. And I think because of that, we got a much, much better movie. I'm really happy. I'm most happy with their portrayal of Luke. I think his grievances with the Jedi are really valid. The Jedi's approach going back thousands and thousands of years, it didn't work.
Right.
It never worked. They got turned into, especially in the prequel era with the Clone Wars, they got duped into becoming a really bastardized version of themselves.
Yep.
And then, when we jump to the end where he does the Force projection and it's revealed that it's him, and he's floating over the rock on Ahch-To, that is my favorite Star Wars moment. I think it's a really good end to his arc in that movie.
I agree.
But I also think that if you were going to tell a story about the Jedi, it would start, hundreds of thousands of years ago, but it could end right there because Luke finally became what the Jedi always claimed to be, which I think, to me, it makes him the best of them. And I think Yoda had realized that by the time Luke saw him on Dagobah, which is why he was kind of pressuring him, like, don't rush in. Lightsaber blazing like a fool.
Right, right.
Train, learn the ways of the Force. And not to say that the Jedi's solution to everything was, just Force project, but just the way that he took on a whole army, stopped them. He did it non-violently. He played the Jedi strengths against the dark side weaknesses that Kylo Ren had.
Yep.
Kind of his passion, his hatred, he used those things against them instead of just fighting them. And I
agree.
That moment meant so much to me, and I think it's one of the most rewarding movie moments, not even in just Star Wars to me. I love it. I thought it was perfect.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think you're dead on the money. I think that is the beauty of Last Jedi is the fulfillment of Luke, the fulfillment of the Jedi, and the revival of the Force.
Yeah. And I think whether, because I know there is some speculation like maybe he didn't die at the end or whatever. Either way, I'm good with it. I gather that he's in Episode 9 to some extent, which I'm okay with.
I mean, it seems pretty clear cut what happened with him, and I would expect to see him as a Force ghost. But
yeah, and I hope so. And even with when Yoda came and talked to him, that was another one, a great moment from that movie. And it's that kind of, he's apt to talk about with Star Wars. When I see a moment like that, Yoda, he it's not the CGI one, it's the puppet. he's talking to Luke, and you know, the music hits, and in that moment, I'm not like a 29-year-old dude with a wife and kids and a career and the stresses that come with all that stuff. When I see moments like that, I'm 7 years old again.
Yep.
With my big ass thing of popcorn, sitting in the movie theater, just watching Star Wars. And some people don't have that, a way to connect with that younger part of themselves. And I think that's a shame, you know, and that's what Star Wars has always been to me, as a way to reconnect with my inner child. And it's always like it's like you get like teared up when you see stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't know if it's just me, but it's like, it's tears of joy, but I think it's because I'm feeling that joy that I haven't felt since I was a little kid, you know. And there's you can take drugs or drink to feel that way, but Star Wars is that, taps right into that for me. Yeah. It's always special for that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think that we have to address the just because I think it's one of the other main critical things of the Last Jedi is the how they handled Rey's origins in that movie. And your feelings regarding it.
It did concern me, just because if she is nobody, I'm fine with that. But they teased and they did so much marketing around who she is that if she is nobody, it will come off as a letdown.
Right.
I'm fine with her being nobody, because I think something that's important about Star Wars is the theme that that anybody could be a hero.
Correct.
It doesn't matter where you come from or who your family is. I think that's an important theme. So I'd like, if that was the point they're getting across with her, I think that's great. But I can't say too much, because it kind of depends on 9. But at the moment, I was like, oh dang, you know, like when she went down into that cave or whatever, and they're like, here are your parents, and it was just her, and I was like, oh shoot, well that kind of sucks, but
right.
But then either way, it doesn't change how I view her as a character. I still think she's a good character. Yeah.
Yeah. So all right. So let's talk about the kind of the dissension regarding that movie and your thoughts.
Yeah. So I know we'll get this out of the way, like the Canto Bight stuff.
Uh-huh.
I think there's some good character parts that go into that, but I do think that it was a little long in the tooth.
Yeah, I agree.
Just that sequence. But again, when I watch a movie, I look at it as a whole. It's not like at the end of the movie, I was like, oh man, if they didn't have that Canto Bight scene, I would have liked that movie.
Right.
No, I thought it was great even with that. And it's harder to me to think of a movie that doesn't have a sequence like that. That's maybe a little too long or maybe unnecessary.
Uh-huh.
But so I'm a little bit more forgiving in that, because that was like a one little smudge on what I consider to be a great movie. And then I know it's like a lot of the criticisms I hear, and you know, it's a vocal minority, but it's just like little nitpicky stuff, like the hyperspace ramming or whatever.
Right.
I thought that was awesome.
I did too.
You know,
yeah, I did too.
People didn't like it.
Yeah, that's what. I heard people say it, dude.
People had issues. People had issues with it. But people also, like the other problem is the kind of the tactical element of the First Order against those ships is like another criticism regarding that whole sequence. Well,
I think that was that their hubris was a theme in that movie, right?
Right.
So to me, that was kind of, I know Hux said, you know, we'll just let them die slowly, blah, 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 and savor this moment. That's hubris.
Yeah, I agree.
It went against them. It went against the Jedi.
I agree.
I think that if you don't like that or if you don't understand it, then an important part of that movie just went right over your head. That's kind of the way I viewed that.
Yeah,
and that was on first viewing.
Yeah, I think it honestly plays to Hux's character. Like, I think that is Hux. I think he is overconfident. I think he is arrogant and cocky almost in a very militaristic way, you know? Mm-hmm. So I ultimately agree, but I do see that, you know, the flaw is there, right? Because, you know, they could just hyperspace out and hyperspace back and that'd be it, you know?
Yeah, and then it's like they could have like the First Order could have just blown them all away, and the movie would have been 33 minutes long.
Right.
Or, you know,
but I do agree with you that I don't think that's who Hux is. I think Hux is someone that's going to savor that fillet.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and because he's always trying to kind of prove himself. Again, he's another in that way an interesting character. I think he has some insecurities that bit him in the butt.
Yeah,
definitely in that regard.
Well, when your supreme leader's dragging you around with the Force, I think you're going to be pretty insecure in front of your own troops.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I watched that the other day, kind of getting ready for this. And when he got the call, he said, "I'll take it in my quarters." And then as he's walking back, his face pops up right there in front of everybody. So I thought that was funny.
You know that in his room, there's dents all over the walls.
Oh, yeah. Just from his head. And because even people criticize Holdo, but I was like, she was awesome. Like, she was a hero.
She is. I think she's awesome too. I think she's a cool character, and I like.
You know who criticized her? Like news headlines. That's it.
But I'm also like I watch. I'm watching Big Little Lies right now, and it really gives you like an idea of just how talented she is. Like she can act.
Laura Dern's awesome.
She's amazing.
She's great.
But that being said, though, I have to admit, objectively, and I'm good with it. You know, because I'm good with the pizza. You know, wish they would have put a little bit more sauce on it, but I can eat this pizza no problem. But I had to admit, objectively, you take her out of that role and you put Akbar in, and I'm more interested.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I guess in that regard, she was a little. She could see her as unnecessary, and it did suck to see Akbar go out.
Well, I don't think she's unnecessary. I think that character who is necessary. I just don't think it needed to be her specifically. It could have. It could have been one of the known players already, and I would have been cool with that too. That would have been a really cool. Dang it! Now you got me. that would have been a really. I never thought about that, but that would have been a really cool way to go.
Disney's New World. They're going to put in the characters that they want to have. It would be nice if it was Akbar, but even then, like, there's a lot of other expanded universe characters they could have used, which we didn't get to see.
Agreed.
Definitely. We don't know what their fates are.
Agreed.
Or whether they ever existed.
Agreed.
And in that scene, you know, where she says she's going to stay behind, and then she just rams the fleet or whatever. I thought that was great. And that to me is another thing about Star Wars. It's sacrificing for the greater good, or to do the right thing, like just kind of say, forget the danger that I'm going to face. I'm going to help my friends.
Well, and I do think that, you know, people feel how they can feel however they want to feel about it now. You know what I mean? But I remember clearly being in that theater opening night when that sequence happened, and I remember everybody's gasp.
Oh yeah, man, that was the same for me. People thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And it was.
If people felt like we're off the rails, we're back on track.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was for me. I didn't even it was maybe a week or two after the movie had came out, where I heard people start to criticize that, and I was like, wait, that scene? Like, are you just messing with me now? You know? And because I've heard like, oh, why didn't they just do that to the first Death Star? Because it would have made A New Hope a really short and boring movie. You know, like.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if any of those rebels. Well, first of all, like I'm just not sure if any of those rebels, like, they saw hope. You know what I mean? They saw that there was a chance where they didn't have to die to save the world. You know what I mean? Like, I think I think like the difference is that in Last Jedi, it's either that or they're all dead. Yep.
And just things like that. Like, I don't watch movies that critically, to where like something like that. I think you got to be at that point looking for things for that to take you out of it. And like I keep saying, I don't watch movies like that. I don't watch movies with a calculator in my hand and a pocket protector and a physics textbook in the other hand, trying to figure out if it all makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I'm similar in that regard. So is there anything else regarding like the criticism and stuff that you have on your plate that you really want to discuss?
No, I think those are the couple things. And think we nailed them.
Okay.
Let me give you one.
All right.
Yeah.
And it was a picture I had seen recently. Someone did an edit. When Yoda appears to Luke, what if that was Obi-Wan instead?
Hey, I saw that too, and I thought that was cool. What I thought when that scene played out, whenever it blew Luke out of a tree or whatever, when like the fire shot out, I was like, Obi-Wan's gonna come walking out of that tree, and it didn't. But it was still a good scene. But I thought that would have been cool. And I hope we do see him again in one way, shape, or form. Would you guys be okay if, like, in episode 9, like, he came back as a Force Ghost, but it was just like Ewan McGregor in like old man makeup?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Who else is it going to be? That's
well, I guess digital mapping.
Yeah, they could do the digital mapping.
Makeup, or if they do that, but definitely his voice.
Yeah.
I think
I'd be fine with that.
I think I'd prefer to see Ewan McGregor in makeup do it, honestly, than the digital map.
I would.
Yeah.
I would. I think it just tie everything together a little bit more.
Yeah. So let's move on to Solo. What were your expectations for Solo leading up to it?
Well, I mean, it was like a roller coaster. They started out good, and then they got really bad just because of all the behind-the-scenes stuff. As soon as I heard that Ron Howard was doing it, all my fears were gone. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. So
cool.
And it was, it was a good movie. I didn't have any problems with it.
Where do you rank that movie?
Oh, man, that's tough.
And I don't mean exact, but I mean like just generally, like what kind of
like low, mid, high?
Yeah.
That's for me. For me, it's in the middle.
Yeah.
Maybe even lower, not because it's bad, but just because it doesn't mean as much to me. We got some good moments in that, but if that movie didn't exist, I'd be completely fine. Right. And again, not to say it was bad, but and there's some cool places where it could go, which I'd be interested to see.
Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, it's fine. I don't have a bad thing to say about it. It didn't blow my mind or anything like The Last Jedi did, but
right. All right, and then let's talk a little bit because you done some of the reading of the EU stuff, and or not EU. I'm sorry, but the kind of the extra material, the supplementary material that's now canon.
It's still EU.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's just I guess current versus Legends.
Yeah. So talk to me about that a bit.
So I've read a couple books. The Thrawn one that Timothy Zahn did.
Right.
That's the new canon one.
Right.
And that book was great. I loved it. They introduced some new characters, which is hard to do in Star Wars. Period. Right. But there's this one character. Did any of you guys read that book?
Not yet.
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, there's this. I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a character they introduced that in the sequel. I don't know. I couldn't get through the sequel to it. It had I don't know. Disney forced some things on that book, but they kind of got away from the charm of the first one. So I got like a third of the way into the sequel to that, and then I just stopped reading. I said I can't do it anymore. And then I read the Tarkin book, which is fantastic, and it's good and bad because it makes you know like what makes Tarkin tick, but then it also like makes you like him, which like I don't know if I need. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because like I'm kind of cool with him just being this evil bad guy, but so I don't know. I think some criticism with those books. I haven't read too many of them. It's like nothing really happens in them.
Yeah.
But I think they're still.
I have the exact same criticisms of them, man.
And if
they're inconsequential. A lot of them are just inconsequential.
Yeah, and that's where I mean, you could say Tarkin is, but they had a good author and he told a good story. So I think in that way, like they're things to get you by in between movies, and that's what I was doing before The Last Jedi came out. I was reading everything, man. I was reading like me and Gort were talking about this, like the Yuzan Vong stuff. Like I was reading that just because I was like, I need all the Star Wars I can get.
You mean Cobra Law?
Oh, dude, yeah, it's silly, man. It's silly.
Something that you kind of say there, calling the books inconsequential now. Now, I think very much these days it's supplemental, but in the past, they were always making new books to conclude, and it would go on that path until you got to an inevitable end. What was that? Fate of the Jedi is the last big book series they did. I didn't read that.
I made it like 2 books.
I was disinterested when they made Admiral Dalla in charge of anything. Garbage incompetent character.
I made it, I think, 2 or 3 books into Fate of the Jedi. That was when there was a cool thing that was going on where like the Jedi started going mad, like they started like losing their minds. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I mean, obviously it was some bad guy trick, for lack of a better term. But I don't know exactly why. The last great series for me is that Legacy of the Force line. Like that run was like. I felt like the EU ended at the end of that book. Like it was like, and that's it. Like it had that feeling. Like it had like, this is the end of the story of Star Wars, and it's good. Is how that one.
Oh wow, yeah, and I think at that point Lucas was just signing off on everything, right?
I don't really know, honestly.
I don't know his involvement.
Yeah, I mean, he had to sign off on it ultimately, but I mean, as soon as he signed off on the Yuuzhan Vong, I think he was like, whatevs.
Sounds great.
Because that's the least Star Wars feeling stuff that I've read.
Yeah, and that is kind of fresh in my mind. It's like they bring in all these sci-fi or like fantasy authors, and that one felt too sci-fi to me. There's some cool things about it, like how they didn't exist in the Force or whatever. I thought that was cool. But then it's like, go ahead.
Well, it just occurred to me. That's a pretty out there thing, and that's a book series that was loved and hated, especially with how it started in Vector Prime. Yep. But for the listeners, anybody that's not familiar with the Yuuzhan Vong, Sam, would you like to tell us about them?
So they're like an extra galactic army, I guess, and they would conquer galaxies, and they existed outside of the Force, so you couldn't use
absent from it.
Yeah, and but all their technology was biological, like they were like against technology. So that is where it gets too much of a stretch to me, because in the books they got to stop and explain how every ship and every weapon and every different tool that they have works, and I'm like, oh come on, like you just don't tell me, let me figure it out in my head.
Well, also like it was just the. So let me say this about positive about it. Like there is some cool stuff that they do address Force-wise with Jason. And there's also some interesting relationship dynamics between Anakin Solo and Han Solo regarding
the relationship.
Yeah, regarding Chewie's death.
Oh yeah, we talking about when they bonked him over the head with that moon?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much that.
That was a bummer.
Because Chewie did it to save Han's son, and Han, and you would think like Han would kind of recognize that thing, but he ultimately just kind of blames Anakin for Chewie's death.
Chewie's been around longer.
Yeah, but it's an interesting spin on that sort of trope, because usually you just play, you know what I mean? And they didn't play it the kind of stereotypical way. They went the road less traveled, but I think it made for a more interesting story. And then for spoilers for those out there, but I mean the book's like 20 years old or whatever, but Anakin then ends up dying later also. So like Chewie's death ends up being for nothing.
Yeah,
and that's that kind of stuff, and how it impacts Solo that's some of the better stuff out of that series.
Yeah, it's what I remember most, even from the books, because the Yuuzhan Vong I was relatively disinterested in. But when you had the Solo-centric stories, at one point, he's rocking a beard and he's just kind of doing his thing, like estranged from everything, and I was really into that.
Yeah,
that's interesting, because I remember whenever they first said that the EU stuff wasn't canon anymore, like I definitely felt a certain way about it.
Yeah, me too.
I was like, well, man, that sucks. But then I was like, well, it's all made up. So,
Truce of Bakura's out the window. It's fine.
Yeah. What do you think about?
That's where I put my foot down.
You didn't read it, did you?
No.
No one ever has. No one ever has.
Everyone just knows someone who's read it.
We just had one person lie to us last episode and say they read it, but I don't believe them.
I'm gonna need to see some video.
Yeah, I'm gonna need documented evidence.
Yeah.
So let's go into. Let me give my little perspective briefly about it because I've read some of it. The only books that I've read that I've found like are really worth reading so far, and I read the first two Aftermath books. I read Lost Stars. I've read Bloodlines. I read Dark Disciple.
Oh, the Quinlan Voss one?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one. I read that one too. That was good. Man.
Yes, so that one is good. The Quinlan Voss one, Dark Disciple, and the Bloodlines are the two best ones. And for that I've read. And Bloodlines is actually like that's one of those that should be required reading because that actually plays into the story.
Was that Claudia Gray?
Yep,
that wrote that. Okay.
Yep. And
I need to read that,
dude. The stuff that and just that little stuff. Like shout out to Andy from Ireland, who's been helping me with some of the Star Wars content on my channel. But some of the stuff that's in there that's like just deeply sewn, like richness. Like I mentioned in that video about how Leia got this note when there was a kind of government attack, and the note said "run" before the attack happened. Like it was a First Order attack, and then. In Last Jedi.
Oh,
and
okay, then I know where you're going with this.
and then in Last Jedi on Kylo or on Ben's table, there's a calligraphy set, so like he can write, and like there's not many people in like they explain in Bloodlines that like writing is like a lost form of communication, so there's not many people that can do it. It's kind of seen as like the person that still knows how to fix a typewriter.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting, man. And that's cool, and I hope they do something with it.
Yeah, and like they make
that'd be my concern
because they make like a big point that like she's shocked to get a note that says "run." She's shocked that there was a government attack by the First Order, but she's more shocked that someone knows how to write.
Yeah.
So I love stuff like that. I love those little morsels, for lack of a better term.
And I hope they're like I said, I hope that they do something with it and that everyone's kind of on the same page with that. And
yeah. So let's see what else. The what about Rebels? Did you get into that at all?
No, not really.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I think when my kids are older to really sit down. My oldest son's 4, so he's just kind of like watches things in passing. But once they're old enough to kind of sit down and watch it, I'll get into it. I've heard good things about it, but like I said, it's nothing I at this point want to invest too much time into.
Gotcha. So let's. Is there anything else you want to talk about before Gordon and I start firing some questions at you?
No, I think we're all good.
Okay.
I said my piece on The Last Jedi. I defended it again.
Right.
That's my lot in life.
Yeah, no, it ends up being mine too. Like the two movies I end up defending the most are The Last Jedi and BVS Uncut. Those are the two movies throughout my entire existence that I end up.
People gotta give them a chance.
Yeah,
gotta give them a chance.
I end up defending Iron Man 3 quite a bit.
Yeah, but I'm talking about where it actually has merit. I'm talking about when you defend a movie, but it has some value.
He's talking about movies that matter.
Yeah, I caught it.
No. Real movies.
No, Gort, not movies that everyone agrees are bad. I'm talking about ones where there is some I'm talking about ones where there is some room, some wiggle room.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
We're gonna have a talk later.
This is the last episode of.
Yeah, no. But so Gort, would you like to fire some off first, or you would like me to start?
No, I got some down here.
Okay, go for it.
All right, so starting off, what's your favorite lightsaber color?
Green.
Green. All right, if you could have a ship and fly it, what would it be?
A ship and fly it. Dude, a Star Destroyer because it's huge.
I don't know. That's got a big crew. Can you fly that by yourself?
I wonder what sort of license.
Oh yeah,
you need.
Okay. I would want then. Dude, the Outrider from Shadows of the Empire.
Did you get into that at all?
I had. Oh my gosh, dude. So just real quick, I had the toys. I didn't play the games. I read the comic books. They came out. I don't know what year, but I remember that was like from the first times as a young kid I was aroused, man. Whenever Prince Shizor or whatever.
Scissors. His name is Prince Scissors.
Prince Scissors. Whenever he had Leia in that like scantily clad outfit, I remember seeing that like as a young kid and be like, oh man, this makes me feel a certain type of way.
I got to go back and look at that.
Yeah. So that's my lasting memory from Shadows of the Empire. I feel like you could fly it and then you'd have a room to kick back a little bit.
Right. Go ahead.
The most combat incapable Jedi.
Probably that dude that got lit up by a Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
He just jumped down right in front of him and then pew, 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 pew.
I want to say Coleman Trevor. Somebody
Coleman
could. Yeah,
Trevor,
okay,
yeah.
Good.
That's right.
See?
Nerds, man.
What did I tell you?
Yeah.
Best moment in Solo.
Best moment in Solo. Wow.
I have the answer for this.
I thought Darth Maul was really cool, but probably just like the first time they went into the Falcon, kind of lit everything up.
Dude, I think
it's nice to see it all clean.
What was yours, Gort, for that one?
The Wookiees.
Oh, really?
Like on Kessel, like Chewbacca rescuing the Wookiees.
Yeah, dude. So there's that one Wookiee that looks like Harry and the Hendersons, like in his face.
Yeah, his face is all
he looked like
something.
You know that old that Land of the Lost show? There's like that little caveman boy.
Yeah,
he looks exactly like that, and that threw me for a loop. So that kind of took me out of that scene.
For me, it's when Chewie sits next to him as co-pilot for the first time. Like
and
the
music,
the music hits. Like it just seems like it seems like a classic Star Wars moment. It seems like a deleted scene that I never saw before. Like it seems so right to me.
Yeah. And I need to watch that again. I've only seen that. I saw it in theaters, and I've only watched it like one time since then. So
I got the same thing with Rogue One. I saw it twice in the theater. I saw it I tried to watch it at home, and I don't think I was in the right mindset for it. I put on Force Awakens instead and had a real good time. But I need to watch Rogue One again.
You keep saying that.
I know.
He's been saying it for 3 years now.
Instead, he learned Coleman Trevor's name or whatever his dude's name is.
He was on Wikipedia.
What's your favorite deleted scene from a movie?
Man, I liked when Grievous killed Shaak Ti. I thought that was cool, and I thought they should have left that in.
It's one of her 13 deaths.
Yeah, for real, man.
Good choice.
Poor girl. Because that was one of the things that it did leave a bad taste in my mouth with Revenge of the Sith, was like he didn't seem as menacing as he did in that cartoon that came out right before then.
Yeah.
He was like this monster in that, man. And I was like, well, this dude's trouble. And then he came out coughing and then being all goofy.
Well, I wonder if that's one of the things, too, that they took that out for. But she had just been left behind on Coruscant after he got away.
Yeah. Because it led right into the beginning of episode 3.
Maybe it's one of these few times somebody stood up to Lucas and said, no, that can't be there. It doesn't work with this. We just did this.
Yeah, I know
people watch that.
I know who it wasn't. It wasn't Rick McCollum.
No, that guy just said, yes, it'll be fantastic. Yes,
it'll be great. He's silly.
Right. Last one from me. Who is your favorite character?
Man, it's tough.
Could be from anything.
It's between Luke because of The Last Jedi, mostly, but then I think without that movie, it would be Qui-Gon. He was the most interesting to me, especially as I got older and you start to question like the things
rules
that your parents told you. Yeah. And I think he had sound principles, and that even appealed to me as a young kid. So
let me ask a few. Who is your favorite non-Jedi? Non-Force user, I mean.
Non-Force user? Dang it, I almost said Leia. But it would be Han.
Yeah, I hear that. Who is your favorite Sith Lord?
That's another tough one. I really like Bane, but I guess that doesn't count anymore, does it?
No. You can use that.
In there.
We'll allow it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought he had the most fleshed out story.
Yeah.
So I would say him.
Fair enough. Who is your favorite character from the prequel era, with the exception of Qui-Gon?
Mace Windu.
Okay.
I thought he was good. But then Padme too. I really liked her. I like her too, even as an adult.
Yeah. Who's
I
your
like her as an adult too.
favorite soundtrack?
I think Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, it's mine too.
That's some of the best music.
Favorite Star Wars video game?
Ooh, man. Probably not the most recent Battlefront 2, but the old Battlefront 2.
Yes.
I love those games, man.
Yeah, that was a good one. Which are, I'm going to ask two questions, maybe, depending on the answer to the first. What is your favorite Star Wars collectible that you own?
So I only have one.
Really?
Yeah. I sold everything last year.
Why? Well, now I've got to ask that. Why?
So I worked at one job. I'm a teacher, and I worked at one school district, and I kind of out of the blue got a call to interview at this much better one. And I interviewed, and then they called me like an hour later and offered me a job. And it was like, it's like 2 minutes from my house. I make more money now. And so I took it, right? But then there was like this month-long gap between where my old job stopped paying me and my new job started paying me, right? So I was like, oh man, I need some money. So I just sold a bunch of stuff, pretty much like 90% of the Star Wars stuff. Wow. I actually sold it all to JD. He took it all.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah. Which made me happy because I was like, okay, it's going to a good home.
Right.
And that made it sting a little bit less. And I said, once I start getting paid, I'll start buying. It was like all the SH figure art stuff. I had like everything that it came out. And I said, okay, I'll buy it back, once everything gets sorted out. But I made a Luke, like the Octo Luke with the white robes on. I made a figure of him. And then Chris made me a Dio where it's like he's like floating above the rock, kind of how he was in that scene in The Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. And I have that on display right now. And that to me is enough to like represent my love for all of it. So like even once like I started making money again and everything came, I just haven't bought anything else. Like I think that one piece does enough for me.
That's interesting.
And it's cool because it's like I made the figure, Chris made the Dio, and it's like a one of a kind thing. So,
would you say that is also the most meaningful piece you've ever owned in regard to Star Wars?
Yeah, definitely. Because again, it's like I said, it's my favorite Star Wars moment, and it's something that me and a friend of mine helped create.
And you're talking about,
so I think
you're talking about Crashbox Chris, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you this: I saw the behind the scenes making of that Dio.
Oh yeah.
And I told him. So here's the thing about Chris, and I love Chris. Chris doesn't want to hear shit other than perfect.
Looks great.
What a talented artist you
Dude,
are.
Hey, he needs a Rick McCollum in his life.
Yes. No, he needs the opposite. He needs the opposite of a Rick McCollum in his life. So, we kind of give him a hard time about it. Like, so like now when he'll send something, we'll be like, perfect. Don't change a thing. It's like an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
But when I saw that, I was like, dude, I would love to see if you put like a DTOF square, because it's built for a DTOF, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so like a DTOF square base at the bottom that filled up the whole glass shelf of a DTOF, and then filled it with like laid out cotton balls.
Let's like look like clouds.
Correct. Like at the bottom, so like the kind of mountaintop was like coming out of the clouds, like like
yeah, I see what you mean. I'm gonna hit up Chris and demand a refund.
Please do. No. So I just said that, and then he wrote me back. He was like the customer is very satisfied. I was like, okay, all right, I'm sorry, it's perfect. I'm sorry.
Customer satisfied. Delete my number.
So that's my guy. So, is there anything else you want to add? Your last moment.
I think I've said this before, but to people who are of the mindset where you bash the new stuff or you're resistant to it, I would just say remember how it was when you were a kid, and the magic that came with seeing new Star Wars stuff, and just remember that if you don't like it, this is someone's entry to it, someone younger, and it's gonna ignite their imagination the same way it did to you. So just view this all with an open mind.
So unfortunately that spurred two more questions for me. The people that the people that you're saying are getting into this, would you say they're so? Question one: would you say they are far younger?
Well, I mean, it depends.
And would you also say that they are more powerful?
What I'm speaking to.
No,
is
I'm
like,
just joking. I just,
okay.
Far younger and more powerful. All right, thanks for coming on, Sam. What's your Instagram so people can follow you if they want to see some of your? They'll see your cloudless display of Octu.
Yeah, my unfinished display now, man. You got me. No, I'm just joking. I love it just the way it is.
It's perfect. I wouldn't change a thing, honestly.
Looks great. Insta_Sam89. That's my Instagram, and then I'm Sam Mead on Facebook, and then I'm on a show with a bunch of guys on the Masterpiece Shit Piece Theater on the Realm of Collectors YouTube channel on Friday nights at 9ish, I think.
That's a very locked in time. I like it.
Yeah, we're usually supposed to start at 9. We were always late. So.
Right. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
And as soon as Gort and I figure out something clever to say that's not "May the Force be with you" because it's too cliche, we'll add that at this part.
Yeah. All right.
See ya.
We need something.
Yeah.